It's official. Steve Angeli is heading to Syracuse, and what a massive addition this is for Fran Brown.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Of course, we are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, it was a formality, but now it's official. Former Notre Dame quarterback Steve Angeli is in fact transferring to Syracuse football. We talked about yesterday how basically every major recruiting expert and insider was predicting this to happen, giving him the crystal ball predictions. 99.999% of the time they are right. Lo and behold, they were right. It is official. So we'll talk about Steve Angeli, his background, his connection with Syracuse, his stats. More importantly, with the stats, where did those stats come from and what were the situations that led to his numbers? That's something that I haven't really been bringing up here over the past week when we've talked about Steve Angeli. We'll talk about Steve Angeli's possible role with Syracuse football and how he makes the Orange better today than they were yesterday. And finally, what happens to the other quarterbacks on the roster? All that and more here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. But before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Steve Angeli is 6'2", 205 pounds. He's got 2 years of college eligibility remaining, and he is coming from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Steve Angeli is a top 20 transfer quarterback on On3 and on 24/7 Sports. And get this, he actually ranks higher than Rickie Collins on both major recruiting services. Does it mean that Steve Angeli is better? I guess time will tell, but the major recruiting services are saying Steve Angeli is better than Rickie Collins. It's not by much, but that's what they are saying, and we'll talk about the quarterback controversy later on here on this show. Steve Angeli is a New Jersey kid. He was offered by Syracuse in high school, but it was obviously a different regime. Fran Brown and company, this is only their second year. Before that, it was Dino Babers' era. Dino Babers and his staff were the ones who offered Steve Angeli in high school, but still, the connections are kind of there between Steve Angeli and Syracuse. On top of that, Steve Angeli's high school coach is the brother of Syracuse's quarterbacks coach, Nunzio Campanelli. Folks, relationships matter. We talk a lot about money in the NIL era because obviously it's super duper important. Players will come and go based on the money. But oftentimes when the money is close, players won't necessarily take every last dime. Some of them will, but not all of them will. Sometimes it really does come down to relationships. And in this case, do I know how much money Syracuse offered Steve Angeli compared to other schools that may or may not have been involved? I don't. But what I will tell you is that the past connections between Steve Angeli and Syracuse did not hurt. Evidently, it didn't because, well, he's with Syracuse football now. Also, fun fact, for those that don't know, you might want to take a look at Syracuse's schedule in 2025 because the Orange are playing at Notre Dame on November 22nd. So we got perhaps a revenge game on our hands right there. Scouting reports suggest that he is a pro-style quarterback. He is accurate, not the most mobile, but you know what? Syracuse just had a pro-style quarterback that wasn't very mobile, Kyle McCord. and he did quite well. Not going to sit here and say that Steve Angeli is on the level of Kyle McCord, but it doesn't hurt to have a pro-style quarterback in the system, just like how Kyle McCord was. Let's get to the stats of Steve Angeli, and then later on, where did those stats come from? Angeli is dressed in 21 games over at Notre Dame, and he has been with the Fighting Irish for 3 seasons. However, he's never gotten the opportunity to be the full-time starter over at Notre Dame. There has always been a quarterback that has been blocking him, and well, I guess he had an opportunity to win the job this spring, and he didn't win the job. But Angeli has thrown 80 career passes. Rickie Collins, on the other hand, who Syracuse got from LSU earlier this offseason, has only thrown 7 career passes. In Angeli's, I know it's only 80 attempts, but he has looked really, really strong. Over 70% completion percentage. Over 11 yards per attempt. The exact number, for those that really want to know, 11.59 yards per attempt. 10 touchdowns in 80 attempts. That's good. And 1 interception. He only has 36 career rushing yards. Again, he's not the most mobile quarterback in the world, but those numbers are really strong. But where are the numbers coming from with Steve Angeli? Well, since he has been the backup quarterback at Notre Dame for a couple of years now, you would probably assume that they are coming from garbage time, and you would be correct. However, he has had a couple of moments where he's looked really good in non-garbage time situations. But let's go through it all, okay? Angeli in 2023, he was 8 for 11 with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against Tennessee State, and that was a 56-3 win for Notre Dame. He also went 6 of 7 for over 90 yards and a touchdown against Pitt that year. That was a 58-7 win, but the most encouraging part about that 2023 season for Steve Angeli was that he started the Sun Bowl against Oregon State, where he went 15 of 19 for over 230 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Then you get to 2024. He plays more in garbage time as well. He has an appearance, I believe, in week 1 for Notre Dame where he goes 6 for 9, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Purdue. That was a 66-7 win for Notre Dame over the worst team in the Big Ten last year in Purdue. However, the most encouraging part about Steve Angeli in 2024, he made a brief appearance in the college football semifinal game against Penn State, and he led a field goal drive at the end of the first half where he went 6 of 7 for 44 yards. So overall with Steve Angeli, he has not played a ton, but when he has played, he has looked really, really strong. He's at Notre Dame. There has always been someone that has been blocking him. 2022, Steve Angeli is a true freshman. You're not seeing the field as a true freshman at quarterback unless you are exceptional or there was an emergency in the quarterback room. Does not happen very often. And Drew Pine was there anyway, and he actually had a pretty good year for Notre Dame in 2022. 2023, you got Sam Hartman, who was the starter. 2024, they brought in Riley Leonard, who, well, we know what Riley Leonard did. He led them to the national championship game before they ultimately fell to Ohio State. Overall, talk about this more in the next segment. Steve Angeli makes Syracuse football a better team than they were yesterday. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you make of Steve Angeli committing to Syracuse football? Are you excited for Steve Angeli? Do you think he's going to be the starting quarterback in week 1 against Tennessee? I want to hear from you in the comments section below, because coming up, we'll talk about his role with Syracuse. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into some player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets, into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and once again, the Orange have landed a quarterback in the spring portal window. They get Steve Angeli from Notre Dame. This is not a surprise that Syracuse is adding a quarterback in the spring cycle. But go back to what I have been saying for the past week. The question has always been, what type of quarterback is Syracuse looking for? Are they looking for someone that is just going to be a backup? Or are they looking for someone that'll actually get the chance to win the starting job for week 1 against Tennessee? And folks, with this edition of Steve Angeli now official, we officially have our answer to that question. They got themselves a quarterback who, at minimum, is going to make this a quarterback competition, and at maximum is going to be the team's starting quarterback in 2025. Because I'm going to make an assumption. And let me know if you feel the same way. Or maybe you disagree with me. I want to hear from you. Would Steve Angeli really come to Syracuse to hold the clipboard for Rickie Collins? Really? They're actually both very similar. Not in terms of play style. Rickie Collins can scramble. He's got a ton of athleticism. Steve Angeli is your more pro-style quarterback. Doesn't make one better than the other, but they're completely different stylistically. However, their career archetypes are incredibly similar. They were both highly ranked recruits. They both went to programs that are big-time programs. Steve Angeli, Notre Dame. Rickie Collins, LSU. They both, for one reason or another, could not really get on the field. At LSU, well, we know who the quarterbacks of LSU have been over the past couple of years. Garrett Nussmeier last year. Garrett Nussmeier again this year. The year before that was Jaden Daniels. They're pretty good at producing quarterbacks. And with Steve Angeli, we went through the list of quarterbacks in the last segment that he was behind. I don't think either of them want to come to Syracuse football and be the backup quarterback. I understand that head coach Fran Brown named Rickie Collins the team's starting quarterback before the spring game. I understand that. And hey, you know what? Rickie Collins was good enough to beat out Michael Johnson Jr., who ultimately left in the transfer portal. He was good enough to beat Jakari Williams, a redshirt freshman. He was good enough to beat out a couple of true freshmen in Luke Carney and Rich Bellin. But will he be good enough to beat out a guy like Steve Angeli? I will say this, and keep in mind that Rickie Collins does have a hand injury, and that certainly complicates things because even though we have been told that he will be ready for fall camp, maybe the injury really is more serious than what we are led to believe. But let's assume that Rickie Collins will be healthy for fall camp. Collins has the advantage right now. The reason why Collins has the advantage is because he got to Syracuse in December. He has had more time to build rapport with Syracuse, obviously compared to a guy like Steve Angeli, who literally just got here. Rickie Collins has had more time to study the offense and actually run Jeff Nixon's offense, the offensive coordinator, in practice. He has had more time to obviously build chemistry with his receivers, with his tight ends, with his running backs. So right now, at this very moment that I am recording this, Rickie Collins has the edge in a potential quarterback battle. That being said, if Steve Angeli comes into Syracuse and he quickly learns the offense and he quickly develops chemistry with his receivers, his tight ends, his running backs, his offensive line as well, I shouldn't leave that out, that advantage will wipe away so fast. And then it'll purely be about who's the better quarterback, Steve Angeli or Rickie Collins. Both of them are going to have the chance. As of right now, both have the chance to be the team's starting quarterback in week 1. But what's really important is this. Syracuse football, as I said in the last segment, they greatly improved their team today. We don't know how they improved their team, but we know that they improved their team with Steve Angeli coming to the Orange. Best case scenario, they got themselves a starting quarterback that's better than what Rickie Collins was going to provide the Orange had he been the starting quarterback. And if you have a better quarterback, you're much more likely to win more football games. Worst case scenario, Rickie Collins, if he actually ends up staying with Syracuse, more on that in the next segment, beats out Steve Angeli for the starting job. And Angeli becomes a really good insurance policy for Rickie Collins because he's been an insurance policy before and he's played quite well. He's thrown 80 career pass attempts and he's looked really good in those 80 career passing attempts, over 70% completion percentage, 10-1 touchdown interception ratio, over 11 yards per attempt. So either they got themselves a really high quality backup quarterback or they got themselves a legitimate starting quarterback, and it would make Rickie Collins the backup quarterback, which greatly improves the quarterback room one way, shape, or form. This is a better team today than what they were yesterday. What do you think Steve Angeli's role is going to be with Syracuse football? What do you think it's going to be? Do you think he will be the team's starting quarterback? Comment your thoughts. I want to hear from you because this is very, very controversial, but in the good way. This is a good controversy to have, bringing a guy like Steve Angeli to Syracuse football. And that's why I want to hear from you. You think he's going to be the team's starting quarterback? Comment in the comment section below, because coming up, we'll talk about the other quarterbacks on Syracuse's roster, including Rickie Collins. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console is required. Just grab your pair controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Thank you all so much for making it to this point of the podcast. And folks, if you are excited about the Steve Angeli edition, hit that subscribe button to Locked On Syracuse, and you're going to want to turn on those notifications because we got plenty of more coverage talking about this edition of former Notre Dame quarterback Steve Angeli taking his talents to Syracuse. We've talked about his bio, his stats, where those stats have come from, his role with the team next year. But what happens to the other quarterbacks on the roster? Well, I said in the last segment that at minimum, we got ourselves a quarterback competition between Rickie Collins and Steve Angeli. And the reason why we know it's really only those two quarterbacks is because Rickie Collins has already beaten out every other quarterback on Syracuse's roster. He got to Syracuse in December. He beat out Michael Johnson Jr., who's now in the transfer portal. He beat out redshirt freshman Jakari Williams. He beat out the true freshman in Luke Carney and Rich Bellin. He was named the team's starting quarterback, but in comes Steve Angeli. And even though he's only had limited experience, I think it's fair to assume that the absolute worst case for Steve Angeli is he's the team's backup quarterback next season. However, this possible quarterback competition is only really a possibility because it might not happen. I would not be surprised if Rickie Collins re-entered the transfer portal. And yes, you are allowed to do that. You can transfer to one school and then decide to re-enter the portal in another portal cycle, go to another school, and still be eligible to play the following season. You can do that. I'm also someone that never holds it against players for transferring out of a program. If you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here for one reason or another. It's the money, it's whatever the reason may be. It's the opportunity, the playing time. I get it. I wish you nothing but the best. But especially in the case of Rickie Collins, I can only speak for myself. I would not hold it against him at all if he decided to enter the transfer portal, because think about it. This is a really cutthroat move by Syracuse football. That's why I ended the last segment by saying this is a controversial move, but in a good way. Because it's a good sign when your program or your favorite team acts in this type of manner. When they will stop at nothing to improve. I love how Syracuse is doing this. But I also am not going to hold it against Rickie Collins for Syracuse doing this. Does that make sense? Because think about it for Rickie Collins. He gets to Syracuse from LSU in December. Obviously, he does not want to be the backup anymore, because if he was okay with just being a backup, he would have stayed at LSU. He could have been the backup right there. He would have sat behind Garrett Nussmeier for another year. Right? Same thing with Steve Angeli, by the way. I'm assuming that he wants to start. Why would he come to Syracuse to, like I said off the top, hold Rickie Collins' clipboard? Why would he want to do that? Neither quarterback would want to sit and be the backup. Rickie Collins gets here in December. He learns the offense. He wins the starting quarterback job. It's made public that he wins the starting quarterback job. And yet Syracuse brings in another quarterback after the spring game, during the spring portal cycle. And it's not just any quarterback, because we knew they were going to add one. It's a quarterback that can actually start. So I would not be surprised if we find out soon that Rickie Collins is entering the transfer portal. I wouldn't blame him one bit, just like I don't blame Syracuse for saying, we want to improve our team. And we don't care that we got Rickie Collins in December. And I love how Syracuse is being cutthroat. Because if you're loyal in sports, if you're a decision maker and you're loyal in sports, guess what? I can move over right here. There's a spot for you. You can sit right next to me and do the Locked On Syracuse podcast with me. There is no loyalty in sports. You cannot act like that. So I'm glad that Syracuse football is doing this, because they want to improve their team But the repercussion is you might lose Rickie Collins. As far as the other quarterbacks, I think the writing is on the wall with Jakari Williams. I know we got some Jakari Williams truthers in this chat. I understand. There are Jakari Williams truthers. This staff doesn't believe in him. They don't. Actions speak louder than words. They have now added 2 quarterbacks in the transfer portal. One in the last cycle, one in this cycle. They don't believe in Jakari Williams. Now, the true freshmen are the true freshmen. They probably weren't getting any playing time anyway. So I don't hold it against them at all. But for Jakari Williams, I think the ship has sailed. My prediction, someone's done. So someone's got to go. Is it going to be Jakari Williams? Is it going to be Rickie Collins? Who knows? But someone's going because someone's either the second string or the third string quarterback. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen to the other quarterbacks on Syracuse's roster? Comment in the comments section below. As far as what is coming up here on Locked On Syracuse in the future, well, as I teased at the very beginning of this segment, we're going to talk more about Steve Angeli and Syracuse. But coming up, it's going to be the expectations for the Orange. Have they gotten better in terms of expectations? Have they gotten worse as far as expectations are concerned? That's going to be the podcast tomorrow, and I want to hear from you in the comments section below. Have your expectations been elevated? Have they stayed the same, or have they gone down now that Steve Angeli is with Syracuse football? Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On Portal Show. Brian Smith, he's got the latest rumors, portal entries, signings. He's talking about Steve Angeli and Syracuse. You want to hear a more third-party perspective, be sure to check out the Portal Podcast. You can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to college football. Find the Portal Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and I will see you all again soon.